I'm under the understanding that when Lemuria finally sunk, preparations were made in Shasta for 2 million. Well, 2 million didn't make it. 25,000 made it. And since then, it appeared at the last time the count was somehow communicated to us, there were like 1.2 million Lemurians in Telos. They're just in another dimension. They're still very physical. And yes, they still procreate and have families, absolutely positively. He brought us up to a level where you've seen these cityscapes, photographs. I'm looking over the first level of Telos from this perspective. It's circular in orientation. Most of the structures here are crystalline in fashion. And in the smack dab middle of it is this huge white pyramid with a capstone on the top. You guys have no idea what's already here and has been here a lot longer than we have, waiting for us to just vibrate at the same level so they can share their technology. They think that there's great merit in humanity. There are 4 particles to our reality: time, light, gravity, and sound. Without others, this doesn't exist. But if you understand what binds them all together, you can influence them. He had a great way of helping us kind of understand that we can actually change the things. When we manifest here, we don't have command over these things yet, but I'm going to tell you what they are because you're about to have them again. We were told that this period of chaos would precede the next level we're getting to. Look around, you boys and girls. There's plenty of chaos to pick from. And it doesn't look like it's dissipating anytime soon. But all of that stuff has to be surfaced to be healed so we can move beyond it. I had to wonder, 2 years after those transmissions, when I was told I had 2 years, maybe through these mechanisms now, maybe those seeds, it's time to hatch. Because right now, with energetically how I feel this is going to be played out, we got like 18 months.
So we want to welcome you to the show today, Lowell. Welcome you so much. Let me start that over because Tracy threw me off there. Hold on. So today we have Lowell Johnson. Lowell, we want to welcome you to the show. We're so much looking forward to you talking with you. Let me start that one more time. Sorry, guys. Lowell Johnson,
this is the part that makes me dear.
That's what I say to her. I'm like, you don't have to be perfect. She is perfect.
Okay. Well, I'm actually gonna keep that part.
This is how it starts right here. Right.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, hello, Lowell. That's a tough one to say. Say that 3 times fast.
Here.
We are so excited to have you join us today. You have quite a story to share, so we are excited to talk with you.
Thank you. You know, I feel like we might have left a lot of it on the green room floor, and I didn't want to do that because, boy, there is so much energetically going on. And so many pieces of the puzzle that I had to kind of wrap my arms around so that I had some level of comprehension on what all of this is about. It covered multidimensionality, and we'll certainly get into that today. You had pointed out that maybe it was important for people to kind of hear about my background. And yes, I agree with that because I was like all the rest of you. I had a career in hospitality that spanned, 4+ decades before I decided to go into consulting. And I found my way into, management pretty quick. There was a reason I could see why that took place. I just had the ability to read people immediately. I could look in your eyes and I could tell exactly what was inside of your heart. And as a manager, it gave me some perspective into, are you really in the right spot? Now, it would take a few years before that would actually play out. There was an opportunity for me to do a retrofit at a place in Denver. And when I got there, there was some management that were questionable. One of them was the front office manager, who was a wonderful young lady, gifted in a lot of ways, very smart. But I could tell, the hotel business is, you got to be willing to kiss people's ass. And that's got to be your nature. And if it's not, it doesn't make you a bad person. It just, maybe this isn't the right thing for you. So during the first 30 days I go to these places, it's an evaluation period for me. You're going to get used to me. I'm going to get used to you. But along the way, I'm going to take some notes. And at the end of her 30 days, I think she saw it coming because I could tell that she wasn't really enjoying her work. The people were great. The guests were great. Maybe just wasn't the right fit. So here was the first opportunity for me to really sit down and say, I I don't really think that you're suited for this job. It doesn't mean that I don't think you're suited for something else. And I will be happy to do whatever I can, whatever resource I've got to find whatever niche you belong in. I just sense it's not really here. And I don't think that she expected to hear it come from somebody in that way. So she asked, would you mind if I have a day to just think about it? And yeah, when she came back the next day, all of it just like the dust settled. Like whatever load she was carrying was released. And she said, you're right. And so she gave me her notice and I moved forward. She moved forward and we stayed in touch after that. It doesn't make people bad. We just have to figure out what niche they were in until we find out how in the hell did we get kind of narrowed in there in the first place.
I think that is so important also to point out to people, because I think, as we said earlier, people are stuck in their 3D jobs and it isn't where their heart is. And they have other things that they want to do, but it's hard to make that leap. You have to get that paycheck and pay your bills. And, that's a very difficult decision to make. So I'm glad you're sharing this with us.
We've been conditioned, have we not? By our home, on our parents, all of our ancestors, by school, by worship, wherever, by our peers. We're all conditioned in a way that I think, unless somebody has said it to you, you've probably forgotten, Earth was an experiment. It's an experiment for humanity to understand more about Source. We are here as sparks of Source, helping it evolve. And so the lessons that we sign up for, all individually, your journey is different than mine, and you've signed up for different lessons, but you come here to learn the good stuff and the bad stuff of that particular journey. And then it gets tucked away in your Akashic records. Here is your record of that new experience for Source to understand. And when Source understands it, so does the rest of the collective. So thank you very much for the crappy things you had to learn on all our behalf, and you're welcome for the ones that I had to go through. But that's kind of the nature of things. We're finally getting to the point where many of us see into this next realm already because we feel the Earth and where she is in it. She is in a cosmic cycle of her own. And it had nothing to do with the collective kumbaya-ness of all of us. It was never contingent on that. Oh, she is on a path all her own. And if the sentient beings on her vibrate at the same level, they will experience everything in that plane. And here's where we are. That's why you start to hear more stories about people having extraordinary experiences, because that stuff is all around us all the time, depending on your level of vibration. When I look at what happened in Shasta, it took me a while, even recently, to think that I had been there for 4 weeks before I was invited to go see Telos. And over that time, it started to make me think, Lowell, your vibration was being conditioned while you were there. So I certainly had an open mind when I got to Shasta, but I didn't know anything about it when I got there. And really, the first semblance of Telos at all was walking through town the first day. I saw it on the cover of a book. Knew about Lemurians, but this foreign to me. So I think that there was a period of adjustment to that vibration over 4 weeks. Man, I was on the same level that they were in, and that's how I got to experience what I got to experience. Was it physical? It absolutely was. I say all that, and I want to reflect back on my 3D life. I was like everybody else, chasing the same things we all want to chase. And at the end, this whole dimensional, or metaphysical reveal for myself, because all of us have a metaphysical side. We just ignore it. But mine's been screaming for attention for a while now, and it was time to feed it. So I had a TIA in late 2015, mini stroke. And the concern was that it was close enough where my carotid artery met the brain that they were concerned that plaque might snap off. So it got remedied. But it was during that time where many things in my life were starting to separate me from lots of other things around me. And one of the therapies that the doctor had recommended, because you're going to be laid up for about 30 days, you might want to get used to the idea. He said, you might want to consider meditation. Well, I'd always been curious about it, but I could never reach that state where you said your mind is blank and here you're at the field of probabilities. And I just couldn't quiet my mind that much. And all the research I was doing on the internet, every app I tried, I just couldn't find whatever this freaking mantra they're talking about. I can't find it. Somehow, I had seen The Secret twice before. I don't know, decided to pop it in while I was laying here on the couch and watch it again. And then TM, wow. If that's as easy as they say it is, it's worth a try. My challenges would be Every TM trainer is trained exactly the same way since Maharishi began this process. And it's a 4-day process, 4 consecutive days. First day is 90 minutes and then 60-minute sessions after that. And you have to commit to that. There's a cost associated with it as well, but there's not trainers on every block. Here's the synchronicities and when all this came together. When I finally decided I was going to research this and reached out, the trainer lived like a mile away from me. So all of the tools were put in place. During those 4 days, by day 2, there was the sensation that I used to carry that was kind of like in my midsection. And I always chalked it up to, it's just indigestion. And when I eat the wrong thing, it flares up. No, it was a stress ball I'd been carrying. Sometimes it flares, sometimes it was dormant, but it was always there. After the second day of meditation, I never experienced it again. And then by the third day, I could tell the difference between even in this group and what that collective meditative energy was like with just 4 people in the room, as opposed to when I was alone. Oh, same results. And by the 4th day, even my trainer said, I could see you training others. And in my mind, I had already felt the benefit. In a few months, my physical form will change. I think when I was started, I weighed like 213. I just got back from Baton Rouge. And anyway, now I'm like at my ideal weight, like 176. I didn't have any intentional weight loss plan. I didn't tell myself I had to exercise more. I just began to crave different things. So I handed all that over to the universe and they just got me where I'm supposed to be. I eat differently now because heavy foods have no appeal. Water is pretty much what I fuss through myself all day long. And that kind of just took care of the physical form. I'm 70 years old. Don't act it, don't feel like it, don't sound like it, but I credit it more to a meditative state. I can't say that immediately I could achieve that level of meditation every time. But after repetition, after a few months go by, it becomes easier to slip into that. Now it's just part of who you are. And I say that knowing that everybody else that's gone through this process and done it this long, in my case, the first 20 minutes when I get up every morning, dedicated to this. And so here's where my day starts. After that, it just has always blossomed. So it's always, I can drift into a meditative state whenever I feel like it now. But that was a muscle that had to be exercised like anything else. But it can be. I'm proof. I'm just like all the rest of you. And somehow this information got to me first. I continue to see myself as an example for the rest of you, that I'm not the only one who's situated to be able to have multidimensional experiences. And mine were crazy to hear in a 3rd dimensional realm. So can the rest of you. And when I started to have other people, just reach out and share their experiences, here's where we began to expose people that had experiences when they were young. And whether they were ridiculed or whatever happened, they just tucked it away thinking, I'm not going back there. Something shifted. After the first of the year, everything seemed to accelerate faster. People were coming out of the woodwork. I had a comfortable following on Facebook of about 1,500, but I knew who they were. These were not bots. These are actual people that I was communicating with. And like the second week in January, I think Gaia had featured the episode I was on with Ruben. And all of a sudden, I was starting to hear from people on the planet who hadn't heard of me, didn't know about my story, and all of a sudden, were they connected? So that 1,500 by March went to like 4,200. Whoa, where'd you people come from? And where have you been? They're all tribe. Believe me, they were waiting for somebody to show up so that they could start to speak about the things that they've been experiencing because they feel this shift. They feel the solar energy when it's coming off the sun at us before they know that it's coming. So they're connected into something else. While I was in Baton Rouge, so I got back there in 2019. So I'm 2 years into meditation. And I had also had an ayahuasca journey that helped me see a little bit more of what connecting to source was all about, because that was my intent. Successful. I'm back consulting in the casino industry. And out of 450 employees, there's 2 people on staff that I can have conversations with. So about halfway through 2019, something's just nagging at me. Like, you're supposed to be doing something else. And I had a good gig. I was making 6 figures. Had good perks working in the casino business. I was going to leave that behind and follow where I was supposed to be. So by December of 2019, I had given a 6-week notice. And I had, in September, my staff had prodded me because I hadn't taken any PTO time at all. I'd been there for like a year and a half. And they said, why don't you go somewhere? Well, I didn't need to. I would go home and meditate because, man, I got in that groove in morning, evening. I didn't turn on the TV. I just found that groove and wanted to get back there.
Had you had your TIA incident at this point already?
Yes. Yes, I had.
Okay. And was one of the things the doctor recommended was to relax and take some time off? Is that sort of what led you to exploring in this way, led you to the experience that you had?
Well, he had advised me that your recovery period for this is going to be 30 days. So that translated into I would be on the couch for the next 30 days. And when he suggested meditation as a form of therapy, it was an ideal time for me to research it. Oh, you got all the time you need. Let's see where this goes. And it was another milestone. It was like just a guidepost. It led me to the next thing I was supposed to learn. Without having a meditative process, I wasn't in a place to be able to connect to the things that I was being guided to connect with. And they were about to get more extraordinary. I keep seeing these as levels. There's a foundation that needs to be built first. So you comprehend what it is that's about to take place with you. And then you need to understand about meditation. While the doors to an extraordinary experience through a portal, so now you've got some visuality of what a portal is because you went through one. What a vortex might be, you have to have a comprehension of all of this stuff. Then when hybrids come across your path and you begin to have interactions with these higher plane light beings, it's a whole nother level of comprehension. You've got to come up with when the second incident with light beings came along. That's when I understood the idea of multidimensionality. Telos was a multidimensional experience. Kumu was a multidimensional experience. These transmissions you got from Yea, multidimensional experiences. You are starting to straddle these dimensions because you're meant to be able to help others hear about it, and you're going to help them make their own transitions. I'm only here as a guide. I can share what I know about it, but I don't have a 1, 2, 3 map for anybody because your journeys are all different. But that's
Absolutely.
The beauty of when the tribe comes together, we get to see each individual's gift just freaking start to blossom. And whatever master you have, only you carry it. So, man, you are a welcome component because when the tribe fabric comes together, you play a role in there that nobody else did.
Right. And I think that's very important for people to understand. It's not, you can't make a leap from A to Z. You have to stack the information, the knowledge that you're receiving over the course of a period of time. And that could be, a short period of time. It could be a long period of time. I know for me, I first started down this rabbit hole of learning about all of this through near-death experiences many, many, many years ago. And that got my attention. And I really studied that for a long time. And then that opened the door to the next thing. So one thing leads to the next. And if you're listening to this right now, you're probably somebody that is open to receiving this information. Otherwise, you would not have found this video. And I think it's really important for people to hear this because we never know what is going to trigger somebody into that next awakening. And that's why I think it's so important for you to share your story. And the first time I heard it, I was just fascinated. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to talk with him because I just love hearing your story. So please continue. I just wanted to jump in and share that.
It's been presented to me that this is planting seeds. And I had to learn as well how this information that I was getting, because I was getting profound thoughts. Back when I was at the casino, one of those 2 people I could talk to, she had presented me with some scenario from a book that she was reading about the fall. So she's talking about what's going on here and trying to understand the circumstances. And when she referred me to a passage she'd read, I didn't have an answer for it, but I went home and I absorbed that book overnight online. And I came back prepared with an answer for her. And I don't know where the information came from. But I know it was true. She resonated with her. So I started to write down these other profound thoughts that were coming into my head because I wanted to read them later. Oh my God, where did I get this? over time, all of a sudden, there's a whole freaking compendium of these things, Lowell. So when it came time to, when somebody said, well, you should write a book about this stuff, the experiences were one part, but all those profound thoughts were the other part. Because guys, I don't know what this came from, but you take a look at this and see if there's not wisdom in there for you too. I understood I was going to be a messenger for it. And I thought I was going to help everybody, that I would be the kind of guy that was just like the rest of you in the 3D business world. And all of a sudden you were triggered by it, Lowell. I have a theory on the reason why I got into the hotel business and why I spent time in 9 different states. Well, that was so I left my mark with every person that crossed my path. They know who I was. And I'm pretty sure most of them are going to remember me as authentic and genuine. So now that kind of guy has some new information introduced that we're really not familiar with it. Would I be inclined to believe it coming from him? Knowing he was just like me for a while, and all of a sudden there's this new bunch of information that's coming through. It's going to resonate with many, like you were talking about. And that's the seed that we planted. But from there, you've got to go on this journey yourself.
I always say the same thing, that I can point you in the right direction to find information, but you must do the work yourself. And that includes, as you mentioned, the meditation piece, but it's also doing research. And I think people, unfortunately, just are a little too lazy to do it for themselves, but they want the information. They just want you to readily give it to them. And that's just not how it works. So.
Until you understand that whatever wisdom is coming through your vessel, and through your experiences that are freaking trapped in your DNA, waiting for you to unlock, there are some things that I have been past. There have been light codes that I know that I carry for others, and it's during these interactions that people pick up on it. I knew I was carrying this for a while, since that September 2022 date, because I was told during the transmission I was. It wasn't until a few months later that I would run into people who have been on their journeys for a while now. And I respect their authenticity and how they come across. And when they said, Lowell, there was something that you said that triggered me. So do you work with others? Because I think that there's more that you've got for me. You know, is there something you have? And when that happened a second time with somebody else, oh, well, maybe whatever that was that I was told would hatch when it was supposed to, is beginning to hatch, because those codes were being passed unconsciously from me, from people that were ready to receive. But there's also other upgrades that I carry for those of us that have received some of this other light stuff already. What the earth had been going through in her former vibration, there had always been light that we've been getting. And when I say it comes from the sun, you have to think beyond it, because that kind of light is a photon type of energy that just feeds sentient light. Since we moved into this new realm, that is full spectrum light. We've been living on like half of that all this time. And so our bodies had not been adjusted to our DNA holding that kind of capacity of light and higher frequencies. So that is exactly what's taking place. Those of us whose DNA had already been, cracked open enough so that our awareness of these things were starting to come into our own field. Whoa, now we know that there's a whole different level of light that's coming in our place. And we're beginning to feel that. So our bodies, as part of this process from carbon to crystalline, here's where we are, and we're starting to sense that. I almost am beginning to think, am I starting to feel that physically now?
Yeah, I think there are definitely some symptoms that people have that are not being properly diagnosed. So
yes.
It could be the DNA changing in their system from the light rays that we're getting from the sun. And I know we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. Can you tell us a little bit more about that in terms of, and I know we're kind of getting off course a little bit because I'd love to still hear the story about your experience in Mount Shasta, but you do seem to have a lot of knowledge when it comes to the rays that are coming off the sun. And I think that's really important for people to hear about right now.
When I referred to Earth being in this cosmic cycle, there's actually a lot of things going on in the galaxy. There was a time when the Milky Way, that galaxy, and the Andromeda galaxy were one and the same. And over galactic history, they separated. They are rejoining again. So all of this process. There's a lot of things going on galactically. Our poor little sentient beings right here on this planet, and where we think our only focus is on the here and now right here. It had been presented to me that here's where science began trying to help me understand. When this process with me began, the first thing that came to my rescue was Einstein's idea of physics. The observer observes something. This is when it exists. Well, we pondered that long enough, and that's absolutely true. You can understand how a collective vision can benefit to that. But here is the basis of thoughts become things. Oh, it's going to be a theme you're going to hear along the way, Lowell, but here is where it began. The things you think about are the things you can bring into your physicality. Okay, let's log that away. Next, I will start to study, because somehow understanding the solar system was important to me now, and where this energy is really coming from. So if I understand there's going to be some kind of solar influence that's going to jolt us to the next place, help me understand where that's coming from. Well, yes, now you focus on our little subset, solar system, and we all think we're being fed by our sun, which is a freaking star and an energy machine that we really can't comprehend the way that we should. She's already sending plasma our way, and right now we happen to be in a time called solar maximum. So there's a lot of solar activity going on here. She's in a cycle that is setting records. For as long as we've been able to observe and record such activity, this stuff's off the charts. The real source of this, and here's where science had kind of realized that our planet, or our solar system, moves around the central sun, Alcyon, up near the Pleiades. So that precession of the equinoxes is a 26,000-year cycle. Many of us were triggered around the date 2012. That's because during the winter solstice of 2012, that reset. Oh, we just began a whole new cycle, new 26,000 year. But the next 2,000 years, we have slipped from Pisces into Aquarius. Any of you heard of the age of Aquarius? Now you're seeing this prophecy really play out, because for the next 2 years, scientists found this band of elevated photon energy that is now being dispersed to everything in its path. And our little solar system just got into this band really about 2016. Now we're bathed in it. So all of this energy exchange we're seeing come from the sun, here is where it really began. Our sun is modulating it, and Earth is just one planet that is being affected by this higher level of proton energy. It's important for us because, as far as I know, we're the only human experiment in a third dimensional platform. So the entire galaxy is watching what's happening here. It has been through these things cycled before, and there's a lot of similarities to here. And if you look at the circumstances surrounding Atlantis, lots of similarities.
That's what I was just going to mention, is we've done this before and we have not succeeded. And so we are now at the point where I believe if we have to get past like the 51% mark to know that this is going to be a success this time, and all of the people that can look into the future or different timelines and see that we actually do finally get through this time in history and we actually pass through with success. Is that also what you've been hearing?
Without question. Here is the difference between every other effort up to now and now. Earth was never contingent on the sentient vibration of the things on her. She's her own sentient being, and she is ready. She's got one foot. I keep seeing her as, well, I have two visions. So I'll give you the one that I used to understand and how I understood we move from this plane to the next. It was like, think of it as a water balloon, and it's going through a membrane. And so as this moves up through the membrane, whatever's on the other side is at a higher vibration level. You can't really sense the lower vibration stuff anymore. And once this gets to the point where the Earth is 51% through that membrane, the rest of it just, and we're all through. There's a better illustration in my head that it was provided over the last few months, as a matter of fact, and it started with a child. And we know how kids are coming into these incarnations with a lot of wisdom for their parents, and their parents really don't understand what their kids are trying to tell them. But this was an instance a friend was telling me about maybe 2 months ago. The timing is irrelevant, but there was a group of adults, maybe a half dozen, and a 6-year-old grandchild who came over who is definitely connected to other things. She began to tell them about this timeline shift, this timeline separation that's taking place. And the darling illustrated this way. She says, I see the earth and it's separating. And I can see this part's pulling away, and this is the part that's going up, and this is the part that's not, and they're going to go over there, and there's only about 40% of us over here, but this is where we want to be, not over there. I had seen something on YouTube recently that was talking about this 3D, 5D timeline shift, and the illustrations almost perfectly illustrated what this kid was talking about. The narrator talked about it, and think of it as like cell mitosis. Here, one orb just splits into two. So here's the 5D world, and here's the 3D world, off to entropy, off this way. Here is where evolution continues. And, the 4D place is just, we're clearing karma. Oh no, we're moving on to 5th dimensional now. Because Earth, in her conception, was 7th dimensional to begin with. It's really where we're trying to get back to. We're just kind of looking at the stepping stones, and our focus has been on 5th dimensional awareness. And that's wonderful. It's the last stage of physicality for us on the planet. But holy cow, no, we're all taking light form and seeing how Earth does now that humanity's here with non-manipulated DNA. Let's see what we can really do now.
Hey there, listeners. If you're enjoying this conversation, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. And let us know what you think and leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Your interaction with us really does help us grow our channel and continue to create more content just for you. So thank you so much for all of your support. We really appreciate it. Now back to the show.
I'm going to ask the question for the people who aren't as astute in this subject as y'all. I try to wrap my brain around the dimensions. And when you speak about dimensions, do you mean like this is a dimension inside your person? Or is this just in your head? Or are we going to another planet? Could you explain that just a little bit to me? Because I want to go to this dimension, just not really sure where I'm looking.
Well, before I answer that, I have a wonderful resource. It's called the Ascension Handbook. It's on my website.
Great.
It's kind of hidden. People should read it. And I didn't write it. I didn't translate it. After the second interview I had done after my Telos incident, somebody that had heard it sent me an email with this attachment. It was 8 sections long, and it went into great detail. It was written by a guy from Australia named Master Tony, and it was targeted for 2012. All of the details about what to expect through the ascension process, including dimensionality and chakra alignment. All of that is included in this document. It was passed to me in October of that year with the idea that I would make it available to whoever else needed it. I had only changed a few things because there were some Australian things in there that could sound a little more English. But other than that, it was meant to go out as is. And so I reached out to try and find this Master Tony. He's nowhere to be found. So it was almost like, Lowell, here, pick up the baton. And for those people that need this information, tuck it on the website. You don't need to hit them over the head with it. But those that need to know where to look for, go to my website, find the home button. If you click there, there's a drop down. You'll find the Ascension Handbook there and all of the information. I can't tell you how beneficial it was for me, Tracy, when it crossed my path. And I read through it. And it took me several times to read it, to get it. But a lot of the answers you get will be included there. And it has a really wonderful, fundamental way for you to understand dimensions. And it has more to do with the universal laws at each level.
That sounds perfect. I'm definitely going to get that and go to your website. And we'll leave the link, obviously, to your website in the description for sure. Thank you. Because I feel like
Absolutely.
I need that.
Everybody needs it. Really, if you want a place to begin the process, to start there, I don't take any authorship over any of this, but I don't take it over any of the stuff that's been channeled through me either. All those pictures that were just AI inspirations that somehow I was given the right keywords, those were all divine gifts. Do I think I should copyright that stuff? It wasn't mine to begin with, and I was told to share this with others so they would start to resonate with it. How can you copyright that? No.
Right. I think we're going to end up having like a 3-part series with you because you just have so much to share. And we haven't even gotten to Telos yet.
No.
So-
I still believe that it's important to hear other people's real experiencers, their stories, so that people can understand it's just as likely to happen to you. Get your mind right, get your alignment right. And I promise you are going to have these same experiences because I'm no different than the rest of you. My awareness of it is. That's all. I was sent to be an example. The pictures that soon, the next time we do this, and we'll probably start to talk about what happened with Kumu. If there's an opportunity for me to show you the pictures of me and the light beings, I'll be happy to do that. And there's 2 reasons why. Here you get to see interactions in the middle of the afternoon with light beings and me. The second part is that start to see yourself in the picture. I'm not meant to be the only one. I'm the first one. And I'm just kind of showing you the way. If they're willing to make contact with me at this level, and they're all here benevolently to assist us through this process, they're just as likely to help you too.
I know we've talked about so many things, but I definitely would love to hear the story. So if you can tell us, I know you took some time off and you were there for 4 weeks. What exactly happened? How did this come about for you? I mean, did you go in with the intention of looking to, I mean, I know the story has been around that Saint Germain had an experience there back, I believe, in the 1920s. So did you go in with that knowledge?
I wasn't planning on going to Shasta at all. COVID was still prevalent. When I had left that last gig in Baton Rouge, that was in February of 2020. I thought that I had some time I know I wandered down this and then I lost my track. In September, when I said I wasn't taking any PTO, I decided to go to Vegas for 4 days and just get away. And while I was there, I thought, if I'm going to move somewhere else, would I consider living here? And so I looked at 4 or 5 houses while I was there in Vegas and found a couple that were nice. By December, I'm starting to figure out I'm supposed to be somewhere else. And I look back at the place. One of the houses I was most interested in, the price has dropped. And so I make an offer in the first part of January. I'm supposed to close, I think, the week after Valentine's Day, which is perfect. I'm going to be finished in Louisiana the first weekend. And so I decided I'm going to go visit my son in California for a few days before I had to close on the house in Vegas. Well, during the drive across country, my guides are nagging. Don't close on the house. Don't close on the house. Now, I've got some escrow money. It's not a lot, but I got some escrow money, and I'm within the 30-day window. So if I decide I'm not going to take this, I'm going to forfeit that. Well, they nagged me enough that I listened to them, and I decided not to. Well, after I stay with my son for 3 days, I'll realize why, because COVID locked everybody down then. And so for the next 5 months, I'm going to be sharing the couch with my son and his roommates because none of us are going anywhere. By the end of June, when those circumstances were relaxing, I just need to get out in nature. I didn't care where. And my intent was to travel to the southwestern United States, near the Four Corners, tons of national parks there to go explore. You want to go off and, connect with something, here's lots of places to do it. As I was starting to research, it appeared as though, some of these places not even be open. And however, with whatever divine inspiration, Mount Shasta was the next thing that got planted in my head. That's how that direction came to me. When I started to think about it, from where I was in Santa Rosa, it's like 4 hours. Boom, I can get there in the morning or an afternoon. It's easy for me. And so I talked it over with my son. he wasn't working either. I said, I think I'm going to go there and just explore it and see what it's about. It was just before the 1st of July. I intended I was going to go there for a week, explore, and then maybe he and I would connect in Tahoe or Reno and, continue to just be outside. At the end of the first week, I hadn't seen all the things I wanted to see. And so I reached out to my son. I said, do you mind if I stay here a little bit longer? And he said, no, stay. If you're connected to something, enjoy it as long as you want to. It won't be until the end of the second week that something really occurs to me. And I had seen during the course of that second week, there was an older couple about my age, and I could see them hiking around. And this was so Friday of that second week I was there, I could see them kind of taking their last looks from the place we all like up on, it's called Old Ski Bowl Trailhead. I could overhear the conversation and the remarking on the physicality of the place. And it wasn't until that moment that I started to think, Lowell, you've been hiking every day with elevation changes like a 20-year-old. You haven't taken a day in between and you go out and do the same thing the next day. Where the hell did that energy come from? That's when it occurred to me, there's something palpable about the energy there. And once you have your boots on the ground there, you begin to understand what I'm talking about. Because I was in my mid-60s when I got there and hiking tomorrow the same way I did today. I learned very valuable lessons, though, the first day I went out and started to go downhill at the beginning of the day. Yeah, you want to do that at the end of the day. So you don't have to make those height changes at the end of it. Anyway, by the time it was all over, I will have stayed there for 5 weeks. I just found a groove. I didn't want to leave and found every reason to stay. Other things were revealing themselves to me. It wasn't just what I was finding during the day. You know how zero light pollution that place is? To see the night sky and the Milky Way in all its grandeur at those elevations. I spent, I think in the first 2 weeks I was there, maybe 8 or 9 nights up there until it just got too cool to be outside, watching the sky. The first night was a new moon, so holy cow, look at the Milky Way without any moonshine. And then the days that the full moon would creep around, that was when I decided, maybe I'll just look at the mountain because it said there's lots of UFO activity. Maybe I'll see something this night. Well, the night I turned my chair on and was watching the mountain instead in front of me. Well, Polaris, the North Star, was right above it. And along the way, I'd seen a couple shooting stars. I thought, well, this is pretty magnificent, until I saw one that started where Polaris was and shot down at the mountain like this. And then it disappeared for a moment. And then it went that way. Okay, that is not a shooting star. So any questions I had about that kind of activity were erased that night. And since then, if you look, you will find it. I even bought an infrared camera that I left with the last people I stayed with because I just got tired of recording all this stuff all the time. By the last weekend, I got a couple of places that I want to go visit. I had not heard about the Gateway Peace Garden, which is a wonderful facility there. And pictures on their website do not do that place justice. Once I found it, if I'm going to go hiking with somebody, here's where we'll meet early in the morning and just get your vibe right, because it's amazing. So this last weekend, I was going to start there on Friday morning and then go back, when I was finished there, to the same spot at the end of Everett Memorial Highway at Old Ski Bowl Trailhead. It's as high as you can drive on the mountain. So where this parking lot is, it's a little more than 7,900 feet. So by the time I get there, there's like 4 concrete picnic tables up in this area. There's actually 3 levels of places to park your cars. And so when I got there just before noon, one of the picnic tables is open. So I thought, I'm going to sit here while I ponder what I'm going to do for the next weekend. There's one other butte mountain that's next to it called Black Butte. And if you ask me, Black Butte's, I think, like 6,900 feet and change. It looked like, if you were to dust all the scree off her, that's a crystal. It looks like the tip of a crystal to me. And so wow. I think its purpose is to take the energy from the mountain and amplify it. I think that's the purpose it serves. Anyway, wow. I wanted to climb it. I read a bunch of accounts about it and people that had been there, and it's mostly scree. It's just loose rock, dangerous. There's really, once you get to a point, there's really no trail anymore. I shouldn't have hiked it alone, but I did. There were 2 other couples that had passed me, so really there weren't a lot of people on it that day. Anyway, as I was sitting there making this determination, I decided that I would do that Saturday, the next day. And while I was sitting here, I was looking at Mount Shasta in front of me, and off to the left, here's her sister Shastina. Well, from where I was, it looked like those dark spots looked like they could be cave openings. Wow. Not that far from where I am, maybe take me 35, 40 minutes to get there. I thought that's what I'll come back and I'll do Sunday. And I'll just have the afternoon, I'll take my time and see if there is any cave openings over there. It was just the way that the sun hit it from on top. So the next day I hit Black Butte by 10 o'clock and I didn't know what I was getting into. It was going to take me 6 hours to take this hike up and down. And it took me longer to get down than it took me to get up. By the time I got back to my room, I was showered and tucked into my bed like at 6:15, and I'm thinking, tomorrow I'm just going to sleep in. My body had had enough that day, and it wasn't so much physical. I had just caused a lot of my own emotional trauma, going up one step and sliding back two. Oh yeah, this wasn't anywhere I should ever been. Anyhow, the next morning, like I always do, I get up around 7 and I meditate right away, thinking that when I'm done, 20 minutes later, I'm just going to roll back over and lay here for a while. Well, I did that until about 9 o'clock, and then my inner self is nagging me. Get up, get your clothes on, and go explore. So that's exactly what I did. I got to that space maybe 11:45. I timestamped some pictures I took there so I know when I got there and when I left. But there were a lot of other people there already. This is Sunday. And this is a popular place to go hike. So there were families and couples, and I was lucky to find a parking spot when I got there. So they all like to go up Ski Bowl Trail and find more elevation gain. I was interested in a trail that went off that way that didn't seem like anybody else went that way, but I have a target in mind. And so I started heading off in that direction. Well, as I made that turn where there wasn't anybody else, I started to make my way up. Because there wasn't really any trails up there, I was going to have to off trail where I was heading, and I began to feel changes in energy. As I was getting close to these areas, that there was some energetic thing that drew me there. I wouldn't really know what to look for until I would revisit a year later, and then after that, when I'd go back, then there were like these natural things that were natural but didn't look like it, where a tree would be inside of a circle of rock. Yeah, that wasn't planted there, man-made. No, these things were here somehow. And then you began to see the greenery around this, where there wasn't greenery anywhere else. This was part of an avalanche in the 90s. So whatever trees and stuff was in its way had been all wiped away. So any new growth had to find something to nest to. And it just, why here? As I moved up that area, I had stopped for a moment because I always plant my light. It's what light workers do. That's what we're responsible for. And I thought, in this energetic place, I'm going to exchange that here. Well, then I saw another one similar that was a little higher. Thought I'd move up there to explore that. And as I was getting set to do the same thing there, well, there was one more spot right here. And it was right against the mountain. There were these 3 boulders that kind of came out. Huge one here, huge one on the other side. This one was high enough, I gave my inseam over, but narrow enough so I could get over it. Well, once I was inside, man, I had this nice little sitting area. I could lean my back up against here. I could stretch my legs out. In fact, I had stood up and looked off, and in the distance, I can see the cars in the parking lot. But nobody knows I'm here, and no one's going to see me, especially if I sit down. So I was listening to music. I had some water and some grapes, and when I had finished my refreshments, I just put that in my bag, and the music stopped. Well, my phone's always in my back pocket, so I leaned forward to pull it out, and as I did and pull it up in front of me, there's no power. So I'm trying to fire it back up, which makes no sense. This was fully charged, not 40 minutes ago in the car, and it has a Mophie, so it shouldn't be a power thing. And as I'm looking at this, now I feel a breeze from behind me. And when I turn around, whatever was solid behind me is now an open portal. And so I stand up to take it in, and this thing is taller than I am, and it appears as though it goes kind of downward. There's a little slope that comes up like a lip, and then it seems to head down. And as my eyes were adjusting to these conditions, it looked like there was somebody down there, maybe 30 yards. I could make out a form. And as soon as that thought came into my head, somebody said, "Do you wish to see Telos?" We get a little jolt. But yes, I'm here to see curious things I don't know about. From where I was, it looked like an adult-sized person. As the light adjusted, as I was making my way down, this guy was not my size. He was at least a head taller than I was, easy. And when I got closer and I could start to make things out, here was this Scandinavian looking being, long blonde hair, with a white gown smock, call it what you want. It just had these ribbons on it that were different colors. And so when I saw it, they looked like badges. So I didn't know if this was like Lemurian bling, or was this indicative of some rank that you hold? I don't know. What I will notice, though, and it would take me a while for it to sink in, is they were flawless. Their face was flawless. He said, well, you can call me Alex. I said, well, that'll be easy to remember. That's my son's name. And he said, yeah, we know about your son. Follow me. So as we make our way down this, and it occurs to me now that this is probably a lava tube from the past. Of course, it would make sense. He's telling me about the different levels of Telos. He's explaining the nature of the council. He's telling me about the king and queen and what role they play in all of this. And as we get down to the end, because there's a light coming from the other end that I can see down this slope. Once we get closer to that, I look back to see where we came from. There's no light behind me. Wherever we came from isn't there anymore. And as we step into this place, I call it a staging area because I don't know what else to refer it as, but it's pretty big. There are 5 more lava tube entries across from us. But more curiously, next to us where we came in, there's this platform. It's about 6 foot by 6 foot, and it looks as though it has like 2 bucket seats on it. No console. That's just it. There's another one over there. There's another one over there. And as I'm looking at this, Alex had made his way and had sat down on the seat opposite me and indicated for me to sit next to him. And as soon as my butt hit that seat, this thing started to levitate, and off we went into one of those tubes to a destination that we're headed for.
Is this the maglev tunnels that we hear about?
No. I think that these were there for Telos themselves, but the ones that you're talking about connect all of Inner Earth, not just Telos. So as we get to the end of this other tube we're coming through, and the light's starting to come from the other side, the crystals that are embedded in the rock around us are starting to refract the light. And every inch forward you move, it's another refraction. You're like in a living kaleidoscope. It was gorgeous. I didn't want it to stop. But as soon as we got to the end and this thing came out, he brought us up to a level where you've seen these cityscapes, photographs. I'm looking over the first level of Telos from this perspective. It's circular in orientation. Most of the structures here are crystalline in fashion. And in the smack dab middle of it is this huge white pyramid with a capstone on the top. Today, the capstone happens to be white. I make that distinction now because I'll learn later from Diane Robbins, who's written books about this stuff, that the color of the capstone changes with the day of the week. And it also correlates to what they wear on that day. Now it makes sense he was wearing white when the capstone was white that day.
And what is the significance of changing the color of the clothing?
They believe that these colors, and that was a color that's being emitted from somewhere else that the capstone is capturing. It was given to them by Venus. So that emits a particular vibration when that color is engaged. And when you reflect that, you're taking advantage of that energy. Some days it's yellow, some days it's green, some days it's purple. It just happened to be white on my visit on a Sunday. While I'm taking all this in, we're going to move to another level, and the craft comes down so that, we're kind of hovering over the level of these structures. And I can see pockets of people here and there. And there were 5 or 6 of them that it was possible for me to make just eye contact with quickly. But everyone I did was like, they knew me. And somehow I knew them. Just couldn't put it all together. The next thing I'll realize is now we're on a part of the 3rd level, and we're looking at 7 acres of hydroponic gardens that are freaking magnificent. I don't see a whole lot of soil going on here. You can see crystal infused in water that's running through this place, but I'd never seen anything like it. Where my mind went was understanding how many people this was supposed to feed. And I'm still in my little 3D mind trying to figure out, even if these crops perpetuate more rapidly, as you suggested, it's possible for them to do. How does this feed? So let's do an analysis. I'm under the understanding that when Lemuria finally sunk, preparations were made in Shasta for 2 million. Well, 2 million didn't make it. 25,000 made it. And since then, it appeared at the last time the count was somehow communicated to us, there were like 1.2 million Lemurians in Telos, which would make sense. They're just in another dimension. They're still very physical. And yes, they still procreate and have families, absolutely positively. I think the summer before last, I had gotten some updated information on the number of Lemurians that are on the planet now in one form or another. And there are 4.8 million of us. So let's just go back to that 1.2 million number and suggest that, okay, these hydroponic gardens are going to feed all these people. And in my mind, I couldn't see how does that work? Here's what had to come to me. They're crystalline in their form, right? Their bodies are not carbon and are not dependent on fuel in the way that we are. They get most of their energy from the sun. So when they eat, it's because they like to eat, not because their body requires it. Once that came clear to me, oh, this makes so much more sense now.
That's my dream, by the way, to not have to eat. I always tell Tracy, oh, I'm so busy and I'm doing so much, and then I have to stop just because I have to eat.
Well,
it's so inconvenient.
You got to wonder whether those are memories that you're having of a time when you didn't have to do that. That certainly makes sense to me. Now we make our way back up to the first level. And there was a structure that I'd noticed when we came in and elevated in that way. It was kind of a circular looking building. Here's where we're going back to. I didn't know at the time that's the council chamber. And so when we landed this hovercraft next to it, there's an opening about the same size so like there were two doors, but there's no doors. These are crystal panels that turn this thing into this form. And next to the opening, I've seen these codes. They look familiar to me. When I had first gotten to Shasta, the first day I was there and walked through town, I found a shop called the Blue Star Child Gallery, run by a little Japanese gifted woman named Haruko. And Haruko, for a long time, was channeling these light codes that she was illustrating. Now, these illustrations in her shop are 10 feet high and 3 feet wide, and they're all hand drawn. No rulers, no curvature tools. And once they're drawn, then she goes back and colors them. They take months. And she's got many of them on the walls, all representing different codes. The first day I saw them in her shop, I decided not to stay there that day, but I was going to come back in a day or so and explore more. There's 3 sections to her shop. And in the back, there's a little room in the back that probably was an office at one point. She's just dedicated it to 5 of these huge codes in the wall in there. And she's kind of left a pillow in there. So if people want to come in here and just meditate in the environment, really, that was the intent. When I finally found it that day and I had carried some crystals, I decided to place the crystals under 3 of these and come back in the room and meditate. So I had gone out and asked permission. Is it okay if I sit in here for a while? That's what it was designed for. So when I came out 20 minutes later, I'm in tears. Just joy from whatever those codes just showed me. I noticed what they were, and in my mind, they're stuck. Well, it just so happens that the one to the left of the door that comes into this room was that new earth was on this side of the panel into the council chambers. And the one on this side, the new angelic blueprint, which is humans' DNA, unmanipulated, was on the right side. And it was inscribed here. So when I said, these look familiar, and he goes, oh, that's Haruko's work. They're accurate. That's why we put them here. So when we entered into the room, there's a round table. It's the only thing really I've seen that's wood so far. And it's got 13 chairs around it. But what I noticed more than anything is this feeling in the room. There's a sensation like, think of the best hug you've ever had. And it's like pressing in your heart core the whole time you're here. So I'm thinking, well, if this is where decisions are made, I'm pretty sure this is how they soften you up before the vote happens, because that's what I'm feeling. While I'm trying to take this in, I see 5 more people are coming into the room. I recognize from this photograph, which does not do Adama justice. If you've seen his illustration on the back of book covers, Adama is in the center of 2, it appears, feminine Lemurians that are flanking him. So when they make their way over, they offer me a seat. 3 of them line up over here, 3 of them line up over on the other side, and they begin to tell me who they are and what role they play. I remember Alex. He's been my tour guide. I pretty much know Adama from his reputation. And out of the other 4, I will only remember the first person, Shyama, because when we were through with this brief introduction, she appears to really chair this meeting. She was going to tell me what I was doing there. And it went like this. They also were under the impression. So this is July of 2022 or 2020. Okay. Everything in my being was telling me that winter solstice was the target this year for the shift. And all these preparations were being made. Awareness was rising because of this particular time milestone. They concurred. The council had met recently and said, we know it's imminent. And we've just been waiting for the surface to vibrate at our level so that we can rejoin the surface and bring the technologies we've been waiting and everything else that's been here in these 5 levels to reintroduce it as well. And when that takes place, not just things will come back to the surface, we have an opportunity to travel to inner Earth. And Telos, I will be reminded after this, is just the first one, Lowell, that you're seeing. There are many others. I'm aware of 10. And there are, according to the last count, like over 120 inner Earth realms. So we have that to look forward to.
And how long have they been under Mount Shasta? How long has it been that they have not been able to come to the surface?
I guess 36,000 years or so.
Wow. And what age are they? I know that you said they have children, but do you know what age they live to?
They can be, once you take that crystalline form, timelines in their dimension don't exist. So they don't measure in years. All I can tell you is whatever avatar they chose, I couldn't tell if he was 50, 500, 5,000 years old. There's no way of knowing. There are many Lemurians in Telos that have been there since inception. That makes them at least 36,000 years old. And that would just be assuming that the clock started on their incarnation when they got there. And I don't think that that's the case. Yes, they've been here for a lot longer than we have. And that's what, it kind of makes me giggle when I see all the attention being given to things off planet. You guys have no idea what's already here and has been here a lot longer than we have, waiting for us to just vibrate at the same level so they can share their technology. They think that there's great merit in humanity. They've reached a level of awareness where it's, I don't want to call it black and white, but what fuels our creativity? Our emotions. Yes, they've kind of moved past that. So yes, they can manifest lots of wonderful things, but it's in our nature to make things better. Wow, let's take their technology with that kind of mindset and see what humans are really capable of now, because that's what everybody's excited to see. Lemurian technologies, there are Atlantean things that have been tucked away waiting for us as well. You know, they get a bad rap because a lot of the stuff happened on their watch. But that's not to say that there isn't Atlantean souls that are still here on the planet waiting to make the same contributions that the Lemurians have offered. Absolutely. Right. And then we'll talk about other beings that aren't going to look like you and me. Preparation that I think people need to start to just make themselves aware of. More often than not, people are going to be freaked out by these extraterrestrial beings that they're just unfamiliar with. And I say extraterrestrials because I want to frame that in with ultra-terrestrials. Ultra-terrestrials are the ones we're familiar with. We know, we vibrate with them. We're used to their form. There's a whole nother subset, benevolent as they are, still, in their evolutions too, that just aren't going to be humanoid. I know we've heard reptilian stories and insectoid stories, and I can't say that stuff doesn't exist. But I'm talking about there are things beyond that we just haven't dreamt, or Gene Roddenberry hasn't shown us yet. There's a lot of that stuff that we just, as humans, I'm concerned, we're going to freak out first. If there's a way we can help people just come to terms with, there's lots of things you're about to experience you've never experienced before. In this 3-dimensional perspective might be a little unsettling at first. And I really don't have a solution for how people get past that. It took me a while to grow past that. There was information there for us to understand how communication is beginning to take place with us. They send light packages of information to us. So if you're familiar and you're comfortable with the idea that we receive downloads, we absolutely do. When we have asked them to flash at us, they're flashing a light code to us. You're not just getting a little packet of light. If you were to see the stream, it's really long, because included in that is a whole bunch of little mini messages that once you get it here and you can unpack that information, here is how their information is getting to us. Now he's given me a way to see the illustration on what that looks like and how it happens. And, we see these things as sigils now. Yes, here are all these symbols that are coming together, and they press them all together in a light package, and boom, this is a light code, and I'm going to send it to you. And when you receive it, providing you have the right translators, now you have an awareness of what it is. It took me a while to understand that I had to receive the translators first. I had to have a translator that could help me understand Lemurian vibration so that I could put it into terms that the rest of us humans can understand. And it's a process. It's a refinement. There's a guy named Jimmy Blanchett, and I want to touch on Jimmy really quick because Jimmy's another scientist that's kind of pulling things together for us. He's originally from Quebec, and when he came to the United States, he had been really interested in physics, for sure. He was an amateur ham radio operator, so the guy has a Radio Shack that he had when he was in California for a while. He had begun, when he heard about CE5 and communicating with these others, he started to look into those codes, because to him as a radio operator, he understood frequencies and sending things out in different spectrums. And so whatever that frequency is that Dr. Greer was using for a while, here's where he was going to take that and expand upon it. He didn't know what to expect, but he thought, I'm going to give it a try. This seems to work for somebody else. Let's see what I can come up with. So there are two bands that he was using. And at the 432 hertz frequency, he can broadcast that with this antenna array he's got in his backyard. And when I say antenna array, it's not like the dishes we saw in Contact. No, these are those long poles. They look like long bamboo fishing poles. He's got 4 of them on an array, so he can lift it, he can move it. He pointed it out, and he had pre-recorded a message that he thought would come from humanity. He wrote a paragraph of welcome messages and a wish for us engagement. And at each suffragial frequency, and there were 8, he recorded this at each frequency. And then he blasted it out. His radio station can reach 250,000 miles out and bounce off the moon, so he knows he can get this message out. And then he's got a shorter band at, I think, 144 hertz that can reach 150,000 watts, like a super radio station. Anyway, he decided one day he was just going to take it out to an open area, and there wasn't any humanity around. There's nothing to come around to disturb any of this, so it should be really a great test place. And so he brought out a radio with him that was tuned to this frequency so that if anything came, he would see it. He didn't expect anything that night. He was really out there doing logistics to see, am I in the right spot? And he decided he was just going to meditate while he was there. He explained it as the radio kept interrupting my meditation and was getting really annoying. He didn't connect the dots until the next day when he came home and thinking, wait a minute. Something was communicating with that radio and there's nothing in this area. Was I onto something? It caused him to go back a few days later. And by this time, he's hungry. Now he thinks he's onto something. And so there's a small group of people with common interests. And Jimmy's, trying to organize it so they can all go. And when it just doesn't seem to come together, it doesn't matter. He's going. So Jimmy goes out this time with 3 radios, all connected to the same frequencies after he's blasted this message out. And when you saw the video of what had happened, each radio was responding differently. The physics of it wouldn't work that way. If I'm getting a 432 megahertz signal and these radios are tuned to that, they should all respond in the same way, and they weren't. One was chipping a little away, and then this one would pick up, and then that one would stop, and this one would pick up, and there's communication. And the more I listened to it, the more I went, I feel this vibration. Jimmy, I think I can interpret some of this stuff. So I intend to go back and visit Jimmy soon to pick up where we left off. He has now moved to Arizona, to an area where the same remote place like that, it's just a better environment, but he's still picking up the same signals he was before. And now we're all eager. Look, it's not like the movie Contact where we're waiting to hear something from space. No, we perpetuated this interaction and something is responding back.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know once you go visit and see what comes of that, because I'm very curious. There's so many people doing different experiments to try to engage in contact. And I still like the whole CE5 experience myself. I think that's probably the best thing for us to do. It does work. In fact, Tracy and I were just at an event. We were at a conference last weekend, and we actually saw things in the sky. And that was the first time that's ever happened. I've never seen that before. Turns out it may have been a TR3B, but regardless, that's something that you don't see every day. And that's still in the realm of what we would consider to be a UFO. It's just more of the man-made kind, but it's been inspired by reverse technology.
That's absolutely right.
Just to go back to you referring to all these different civilizations under mountains, I wanted to ask you if you know of any in the water. There's been so many sightings and so much activity, and we've only really explored, it's my understanding, like almost like maybe 10% of the ocean. And there's got to be something down there.
Well, first of all, there are things that are under the water, but they don't play by 3D rules. That stuff is in a whole different dimension. So where we think it's either underground or underwater, vibration doesn't work that way in dimensional realms. So, even though the fourth dimension is all around us right now, I suspect that you're probably not touching any of it right now. That doesn't mean it's still not there. It's the same, one day I'll figure out a better way to explain this so that other humans can understand it in their own 3D terms. I think once you start to dig into the Ascension Handbook, more of this will just resonate with you. And, now I see what that feels like. So I wish there was a better way for me to explain it. There's all kinds of things under the water. When I think of Earth was first built out, when the mantle was built out, and the way I understand it was when, the Galactic Federation decided that Earth was going to be built out to support life, that they called upon the Pleiadians first to build out the mantle because they were, galactic botanists. They were master botanists. They understood what to do. And when they were through, it kind of coincided with a time when, the Lemurians had lost their planet. And so they had migrated to Sirius, kind of waiting and figuring out what they were going to do with their evolution. And the Sirians invited them. Well, after the Pleiadians had built out the mantle on the Earth, the scientists stepped back and looked at this and went, oh my God, it's gorgeous. So they petitioned to colonize here. That's when the Lyrians heard, well, wait, is there an opportunity for us? And was there ever? Here are master builders, master architects. And these guys were huge beings building these behemoth things that we can only imagine what is still left from their realm that's under the earth or underwater will be blown away by what has been left behind by that whole influence.
I know the arcs are a big topic of discussion these days, these large arcs that are planted deep underneath the ground, all over the earth in many different locations. Is that something that either Alex or the people that you were connected to through Telos may have given you any information about?
There's lots of visitors coming and going from the planet, and they understand how the grid works here. They're stopping by to re-energize too. And it's not like, they're not fueling up and they're not looking for water. They understand how cosmic forces work. And the Earth's grid is in the process of reconfiguring herself, because through this process, her original crystal temples had been kind of knocked off of kilter. All of those things are coming back into alignment so that the grid is intact again. Once the grid for the Earth is intact, then connecting us to everything else is going to be easier. When the Lemurians were the stewards of that grid work on the planet, it was seventh dimensional. Wow, imagine what you could connect to there, because the Earth's connected to everything else too. Somehow during the fall, the Atlanteans didn't have the wherewithal to reach seventh dimensional awareness. They were stuck at 5. And when they pulled what they did, well, you stuck yourself here now permanently. So they had to rebuild a new 5D grid because they couldn't use the 7D grid. They didn't have the technology to access it, nor the ability to fix it. So they had this other grid that had been built on the top of it that's just waiting for 5D to plug into.
Wow, I've never heard it explained that way before. That is very eye-opening and very interesting. And in regards to energy and frequency, I know you mentioned the Telosians are basically waiting for this new level of vibration, right? For us to raise our vibration so that they can actually come out to the surface. So how is it that Alex was able to come out and you were able to meet him on the mountainside?
He didn't come out.
Oh.
He
You went
didn't
in.
come out. And there's another story similar to that. The following year, when I returned to Shasta, it was in May. So the road to get up there wasn't quite open yet. And if I was going to decide I wanted to visit that area again, I was going to have to hike it. But I was so determined to go back to see what happened at that vortex spot, I couldn't get back there fast enough. So I made that hike to do that day. Anyway, when I got there in the same space, this time, things were different with me to begin with, because all along the hike, I was beginning to see more of those energetic places I was trying to explain about before. Now I was seeing them in front of me. And there were 4 instances where I just had to stop because I felt like I'm in places no one's been here before. And I felt the energy that was here. It just like felt I was in some kind of vortex that would connect me to an inner earth opening. Later, it'll occur to me that more of these energetic places are starting to reveal themselves. They're not meant to be secret anymore. They're meant to be the people that vibrate. They're meant to be easy to find because we're so close to where we're going. They want to make it easier for people to be able to find these places when the time comes.
And then you mentioned that Alex also said that he knew you already. He knew about you. So how does that come about? I mean, I know you were doing the work on yourself with meditation and you were kind of raising your own vibration, but what was the connection that you had or that they had with you?
I would find out later that I was a Lemurian in a former incarnation. I was a Lemurian, and I was one of those first wavers that Dolores talks about. If you look at my circumstances, I was born in 54. Was I part of the first wave that came after, in my opinion, after we took atomic power and turned it into weaponry and dropped it on Hiroshima and showed them what we could do to the planet? That is when this other angelic help decided humanity is no longer hands off. We were left to our own evolution. It had been that way all along. But when we started to show them what we would do with a cosmic asset and destroy parts of the planet that way, here's where they drew the line. Now, they still couldn't interact physically. How could they do that? Well, we could, if we are incarnated on this side, we could affect all kinds of change once we woke up on this side. So it's not just me as Lemurian that woke up on this side that understands they're part of this effort. There are lots more that I'm just unaware of, but mark my words, they're here raising their own vibration to contribute to this. They're here for this process. I knew a few years ago, I was here to be part of the shift process. I would be present during that process, and I was here to be an emissary, ambassador for the Lemurians when the time came. So when I need to reintegrate my friends on the surface with what's underground, I can tell you where to go, how to get there, and here's the plan. Just all seems like it's coming at an accelerated rate now, and you can't really deny that anymore. So here are the things that made sense and resonated with me. When I get the opportunity to share them with others, here's where, when you ask me if I will share what I know, it's yes, and here's why. Maybe I'm not here to affect change in everybody, because like I said before, it's too late for that. But those of us that do vibrate, man, we're hungry for anything I can get current information. I'm not reading from a book that was written in 2014. I'm telling you what's going on right now. Those are the ones I seek out.
And I think it's so important to have these firsthand accounts for people to hear directly from you. And that's why I appreciate that you're sharing this story. Some people, I feel like, have these experiences and they just keep them to themselves. And maybe they're just, private people. I get that. But I think more and more people need to hear this directly from somebody who's had that experience.
I'd run the roller coaster trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. Because each time one of these things would happen, I go, okay, now what am I supposed to do with that? And when the answer really wasn't that clear, you're supposed to be an example for others. And when the time comes and whatever this was that was planted and decides to hatch, Lowell, it will. So, when you reached out, I had to wonder, 2 years after those transmissions, when I was told I had 2 years, maybe through these mechanisms now, maybe those seeds, it's time to hatch. Because right now, with energetically how I feel this is going to be played out, we got like 18 months in my mind to get our vibration right before the earth is ready to change. All of you that vibrate at this level, if you're listening to this, you already do, or you wouldn't be paying attention to this content at all. You are fine. There's other parts of the planet, though, physical parts of the planet. And here was another document. So when you go look for the Ascension Handbook, there's another tab below that that talks about the golden tie allotments. So once you're finished with the first, you might want to go back and visit the second. I found that from an archive of a woman who I just love, Maya. She's been channeling Thoth since the 70s and has been putting this stuff away in archives ever since. Well, this kind of came to light in the mid 90s, and it talks about the preparation. He refers to the shift in going from Earth World 1 to Earth World 2. This is called Light Principle 40, and we're in the middle of it. When you read this document about what he's telling her through this channeling, it's probably 5 pages long. You read through the first 2, you'll get what's going on right now. In the first paragraph, it goes on to talk about this period of time where the adjustment's taking place. And back in the mid 90s, he outlined this period of time between 2015 and 2025.
And I know you mentioned Dolores earlier, and Dolores Cannon, she's one of our favorites. And she talks a lot about this in all of her books as well, The New Earth. And she has multiple books, many, many books, which everyone should look up. But jumping back, Lowell, I do want to just ask you a couple more questions about the experience, because it's just so fascinating that you got to experience this. I think we all want to have this experience. We all want to know exactly where to go and how to get into this mountain.
And I'm happy to share that with everybody. You all should know where it is. But like I said, I don't think you're going to need to find this little niche. There was actually another area that I've shared with lots of other people. And when you see this huge rock, it freaking looks like a door to Telos.
When you were inside, I know you mentioned you were at a table with the council. I'm assuming what they were sharing with you was all of this information about needing to bring this forward, right, to the people and allow people to hear more about this. How long would you say you were in the room with them or just under the mountain? And then also, how did they politely tell you it's time to go?
Yeah, I should actually finish the story, and that'll address some of these things that you're asking me. So,
okay.
Once I understood from Shyama, because she had explained this timeline and how the council believes that all of this is imminent as well, they just want the surface to know that they're here and that they're eager for that reconnection to take place. So now I'm going to understand why it's me. The first thing they gave me, she made 3 observations. First was that you can hold 5th dimensional awareness. And I thought, well, yeah, I guess I can. I didn't really give that any more thought. But over time, I gave it a lot of thought. And that not everybody achieves that level of awareness, especially when you're sitting here in 3D. So I constantly have 2 perspectives of everything I'm looking at. The 3D reflex, and yeah, it's just as emotionally charged as the rest of you. And then there's this higher aspect that sees, I see the bigger picture. And this, it doesn't matter. But it took a long time to develop that. The second was that she said, we know you're the protector of Gaia. Now, no one heard me ever utter that phrase. I heard that from Mother Ayahuasca during that ayahuasca journey 2 years earlier when she called me that. So now dots are starting to connect. And then she just went on. The third was that she was trying to explain my connection to them already, which was clueless to me, and that they had hoped that I would be an ambassador and an emissary when the time came. Well, that's when it was my turn to respond. I'd said nothing. This whole time I was there. I was listening to Alex. I wanted to take in what was there and hope that, wow, if when all this is done, I wish I could take off my head, this like a VR unit, so you can put it on your head and see what I saw. When I said I would be honored. Now, before that, of course, through my mind is going, why you? Are you worthy? Don't say any of that. Just, I would be honored. And with that, this meeting's over. They got what they needed to get out of it. So the 5 of them got up and left in that direction. And Alex and I went back to this hovercraft and made our way back to the staging area.
And by the way, how were they communicating with you? I also just wanted to ask that question. I was curious.
We were speaking. This was speaking in my language. So later, I would understand that there's vibration that I should be understanding. I don't know if they did that for my benefit in this particular trip, but it was just like you and I were speaking right here. I did have 2 questions. And so at the end, I was going to ask them of Alex. And I said, first, can I tell anybody about this? And he laughed. He said, we want you to tell everybody. It's no secret, and we don't want it to be a secret that we're here, but we're protecting our energy, and that's why we haven't come back to the surface. Second is, will I be able to return? And he said, yeah, you'll be able to return prior to the shift, and nothing more than that.
How much time you were gone for?
I felt like I was there for 4 or 5 hours. Easy. It just looked like we lingered over the time we were in the hydroponic gardens. We spent really more time in the council chamber than it appeared to be. But the timestamp I had taken from the car when I left was 11:44. And when I got back, it was 1:54. No, it was a little after 2. So like 2 hours
Wow.
linear time.
So do you feel like once you actually entered into the mountain, that time essentially stopped, or you were no longer operating on 3D time?
It doesn't. The more time you spend in that next realm, the more you come back wondering how you did so much in the little amount of time that you were there.
Similar to
Dave
near-death
Wallace,
experiences.
Yes, exactly. He had a great way of helping us kind of understand that we can actually change the things. When we manifest here, we don't have command over these things yet, but I'm going to tell you what they are because you're about to have them again. There are 4 particles to our reality: time, light, gravity, and sound. Without others, this doesn't exist. But if you understand what binds them all together, you can influence them. What binds them together? Consciousness. And even in this realm, if it's your intent to get your mind to the place where you can levitate where you're sitting, you can do it. I know it's a muscle you haven't exercised, and because in my little 3D head storage, I can't do that. Let me tell you, yes, you can. Mm-hmm. These types of telekinetic communications will begin to happen with you and your friends more often than not. The more we get in tune with this level, the more we know who we're communicating with, and the tribe's already on my level. They know what I'm thinking when I make the call is really just to validate it.
And did you want to leave there, or were you?
No, I
wanted to stay.
I wanted to see more, but I thought that my opportunity to go back would be sooner than before the shift. Oh, now I remember, because you had mentioned something about Alex coming out. That's where I was beginning to explain when I returned that day. When I got next to the portal place, I could almost see that energetic signature of whatever the portal was. And so I went back up in the place that I went the first day. Now, there's nobody up here because the only way to get up here is to hike it. The parking lots are empty, the road's closed, and there's still snow on the ground. So I looked back at where the parking lot would be and was planting my light like I always do. And then I felt a breeze from behind me again. So I turn around now, and this time I'm standing up facing this opening. And now the opening's gone, but I can see Shyama just inside the opening. And your question was exactly what I asked her. I said, "You're so close, why don't you step out into this realm?" And she said, "Well, I'd have to drop my vibration too low to do that." Oh, yeah. I said, "Well, who would do that?" She goes, "Well, you did." Yes, I guess I did. Talk about the nature of things for about 30 minutes. I had been given some Ethereum, and that's a topic for a whole another day. It's not cryptocurrency. This is, let's say it's some material that was tucked away in a hyperlap. There was a dimensional overlap that had created this hyperspace for this material to be tucked away in. And later, it will help benefit humanity by helping open up its DNA. Well, if you know it on Dara crystals, that's what this powder is. Once it's fused, it turns into Andara crystals. But when the gods were on the planet, they were seeking this powder that could be transmuted from powder into gold.
I knew gold was something that was very sought after. I understand that they would put it in the atmosphere to protect the planet.
They would ingest it.
That too, yeah.
So this powder was put in my path. How? I didn't even know it existed. So I attribute a lot of my expanded awakening to this accelerator. It wasn't that it wasn't going to happen without it, but there was definitely some accelerator to having all this. And it's not the kind of thing you can get and buy anywhere. These things were all lined up in a particular way for me to benefit from.
Did you say that was given to you by Adamo?
No, I can't talk about the source it came from.
Okay. There's not enough
there isn't
for all of us.
more to have from the source that it came from. That opportunity is just gone. But nonetheless, it's still part of what the hell happened. And if you understand the magic behind what this stuff was in the past.
Is that mana? Because I know mana was something that the ancients would consume.
was probably like, in its source, it's called prima matra. It's creation material. So just like you called mana, I'm sure that it's the same, it's a different verb for the same idea. Yes, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. We're not really taking in breath anyway. We're taking in light from the sun. Yes.
Okay, so just kind of wrapping up your story here, because I'm just curious, what did your son Alex say about all of this when you got home and said, I have something I have to tell you about?
Well, it took me a while to decide to share it with him as well, without anybody. And my son and I are very close. He was definitely going to be one of the ones I would share it with right away. But he's still in the middle of his 3D life. So he listened politely and patiently. When he understood the nature between 3D and this life that we're in, that he's working his way through, and the higher elevated things I was talking about, he pretty much said, Dad, I'm not done with this yet. And I totally respect that. I want you to know what's going on with me, because sooner or later, somebody's going to come along and say, that's your dad. You know that, right? So you need to be prepared for that. But
he's kind of a big deal.
Gone along, well, no big deal things have happened. I don't necessarily think that made me all that special. But anyway, over time, his openness to it has expanded a little more. And he's more curious about things that are now starting to appear in his field and his roommates, because they were all kind of part and parcel of this. It's all we get to do is plant seeds and step back. I'm not here to hammer down anybody's throat. I understand this as my truth, and I can't say that it's everybody's.
So one might say the experience you had was very ethereal.
Yes.
See what I did there?
Yes. That's damn accurate, but we need to embrace the ideas that we're walking around in an ethereal body around this one too. And when we sense that, now we understand how we can connect with others without uttering a word. We just pick up on the vibration. So that word ethereal is a good word to use and help people get in touch with that. We're so busy looking at our freaking phones all the time that we ignore what our higher self and the environment around us is trying to communicate. It's not like these elements in this next dimension aren't reaching out for some kind of acknowledgement from us. They sense what is going on here too. And every attempt for them to try and get our attention, they're going to take everything that you recognize as synchronicities and throw it at you as often as they can to get your attention.
And I know there's a lot of that happening these days. We talked briefly about this before we started recording, that the world is changing very rapidly, especially in this 3D life that we have here. There's a lot that is coming to the surface, shall we say, especially as it relates to pop culture and the news. And that, I think, was part of this plan, right? So this information coming out is something that was meant to happen. And I know you've got some ideas around that. And also, if you can predict for us what's going to be happening in the next 12 to 18 months, we would appreciate that too.
I don't really like to look into the future, because that implies that I want to influence your probabilities. You haven't decided. I haven't decided what my next step is going to be. So for me to think that I am in a place to be able to talk about it, I enjoy looking back on timelines to see what happened. I'm less inclined to talk about what's happening in the future, because it takes away from my respect for your sovereignty and your free will. Yeah, I'm kind of stepping all over that. So that's why I tend not to talk about it. But I will tell you what my perspective is in kind of what's happening. I sense now that I understand the nature of how this solar energy impacts the planet on a more metaphysical level. Now I can see it line up with these timelines that have been presented to me. And even though when I was talking about the golden tile allotments, and I need to elaborate a little bit more on what those actually are. These are areas on the planet already that are predisposed to these higher vibrations. And the list is very familiar to all of us. Shasta, Sedona, Egypt, Greenland. You already know Hawaii. People that have been drawn to these places for a long time without understanding the reasons why Some of them went there to assist in the clearing process, and some of them just went there to be, because they know that when the shift takes place, there will be places on the planet that is not done with all the seismic activity. The Earth is just fitting into a new physical form of her own, and that's not going to come without earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic activity. You see all the flooding that's been going on. Look at all this crazy stuff that's been happening. We were told that this period of chaos would precede the next level we're getting to. Look around you, boys and girls. There's plenty of chaos to pick from. And it doesn't look like it's dissipating anytime soon. But all of that stuff has to be surfaced to be healed so we can move beyond it. Those that don't wish to be healed, I send you love and light, and I see you entropying with the rest of the earth that is going in that direction. Because I feel this meiosis is taking place right now, and those of us are leaning in this direction or up, or however you want to see this ascension take place. I feel it, and lots of others are too.
I agree. I think it's just palpable. It's in the air, and everybody, senses something is coming. We don't know what,
Yes.
but, we all feel the energy of that. And I just want to say thank you so much, Lowell. I know we've taken up so much of your time today. We're getting close to 2 hours. So we just appreciate you sharing your insights and the experience that you had. I know you've had other experiences since then. So we want to invite you back to talk more about that. I think that would be a great thing for us to share with the audience. And so before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share with anyone listening today?
There is more, and these other instances that you were referring to are more likely that others will have those experiences. I can't guarantee that people are going to be invited into Telos in the way that I was, but I'm not ruling it out either. And I'm not saying I'm the only person who's had contact with them, because there are lots of channelers who have, and that's just been validating for me. But when we get into the next time we speak, and I'll bring some pictures and we'll show them what interactions with light beings are going to be. These are instances that I promise everybody is capable of having once your vibration reaches their level. I was never meant to be the only one. I'm the first one to kind of introduce these ideas to you. And those of you who it resonates with right away, I promise you're going to be some of the ones that are chosen next to experience this. It's like a light I'm supposed to pass. Once we have this awareness between me, it's not, you're not tethered to me. Now, we don't forget the tribe ever, but you got what you were supposed to get from me. And now it's your turn to pass it along to the next hub so that they can pass it along to their hubs and see how this translation begins to happen. Here's the way it's supposed to be spread. But where I thought it could be recorded and somebody would listen to it, the more meaningful interactions are these, where there's real FaceTime. And the more we get an opportunity to meet and hear from real experiencers, not talking heads, then you'll get a much more realistic idea of what's going on. Stop, and I hesitate to even give you directions. Stop focusing on stuff that you've read in books 10 years ago. A lot of evolution has taken place in the last 10 years, boys and girls, including with you. So maybe we should talk about the things that are happening right now.
Yeah, I think these conversations are so beneficial and so needed. And we just look forward to the next conversation that we'll have with you. So we can't wait for that. But we just want to say thank you so much for generously sharing your story, your light, and your energy with us. We very much appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.